Hi folks, I'm about to get into talk to you about a little bit about the first thing is what's called control structure. And control structure has a lot to do with how you lay out your course and how you interact your courses with it. Just some basic stuff that we're going to talk about. There's actually three types of structures we're going to talk about with it, and I'm going to get into each one of these things more and more in depth as we progress to this. But the first structure I want to talk to you about is the what you've been doing on all this time. Let me just throw up a blank here. So the first time we talked about is something is sequential, and you have done this a little bit about this. And sequences, it's very top down type of coding with it. You hard coded like the Celsius problem that we just did with it. You hard coded the variable and you put it in there, and then you run a formula, and basically you output this into what's inside the memory with it. So you let me just basically you allocated memory. Meaning you declare, you initialize the memory, you hard code the memory, and then you did something with that memory, with that formula. You did something with that memory. So do something with the memory. So what is that? It could be a formula, or conversion that you're doing with it. So anything like a formula or conversions, anything like that with it as well. And of course, the last step you do is you output the memory to the screen. All right. So now we're going to get into what's called control structure. Control structure details a little bit more with this. And the control structure, the first thing is you're going to talk about is the that you're going to look at is a lot of what's called let me do this. It has what's called the if, and then statements with it. All right. And we're going to talk about some of these statements in here, and I want to start with very, very simple with it. The third one, we're going to talk about what's called the repetition. The repetition is just a repetition of code that you run a while loop and you do it over and over and over again with it. So let's just hold off on that. But this is the part I want to hone in on today's conversation with it. So just to show you. I would like for you to, if you could, remember our directory you had. I asked you to create a directory called JavaScript class exercise. Underneath it, we did a lot of the coding. There's about 4 exercises you should have under basic, basic 01 underscore basic, Celsius, hello world, null underscore bool, and variables. The second group that we're going to get into today, I want you to create a directory. Let's call this thing 02 underscore control structure. One word. Okay. 02 underscore control structure. It's empty right now because we haven't put anything in there. So I'd like for you to fire up Visual Studio for me with it. And this is how it looks like with it. If you can please click on Open Folder and navigate to your folder. I have mine on a thumb drive, so it's a little shorter when we compile. I'm going to point to that new directory that we just created, 02 underscore control structure. Or better yet, if you want to point to at the level of the JavaScript class exercise and having it seen like this, that's fine with it. Yeah, let's just do this for now so you can see both of the directory in there as well. So JS class exercise, and you can click on select. And this is what it looks like, right? So last time we kind of left off with the variable with it, and this is the 4 files that we left in there with it, and here's the control structure folder that we just created. I'm going to collapse that for the time being. I want to click on this 02 underscore control structure, and if you can please click on the new file for me. We're going to create a new file. It's a sub file underneath the control structure 02 underscore control structure directory. I'm going to call this thing if underscore else dot js. Okay, if underscore else else dot js. I'm gonna hit enter. And it looks like this. Just a blank file with it. There's no need for me to have all the other files open, so I'm just going to close the variables and the Celsius and the null, just leaving it right here with it as well. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see with what we're doing. So in this particular discussion, I want to talk to you about is, and I'm going to document this as we go along with this, and you're welcome to follow along. But in coding, if you remember how we document, was that you did a / and an asterisk, and then you close off. I'm going to do a bulk comment, which means that it's totally ignore right now with it. So you should be comfortable with a lot of the stuff that what we're going to get into right now with it. So between line 2, line 1, and 4, between after this asterisk and before this asterisk, it's basically putting a blindfold into the compiler, and the interpreter just basically doesn't see it. So we're going to talk about the if else statements with this. And just to give you a little bit about behind the scene, why do we have this? So if you recall, the bool data type that we talked about is either on or off, or what's called true or false, right? Has to be one of these things. If you think about how you every morning how you got to work or how you got to school, you had to make a very, very clear decision in how you got out of bed when the alarm goes off, and it was a yes or no answer with it. So all these are all triggered by events and the bool data type with it. And this is what we're going to get in. So for example, if we did a if, and I open up a parentheses in here, it has some sort of condition in here. I'm just going to write the word condition in here for the time being with it. This is just not true inside of this, and I have to open up what's called a code block. Anyway, so this condition, the way how you read this is, if this condition is true, then I would enter this code block. Now, in JavaScript, you need to have a code block. And in JavaScript, if you write more than one line of code, you need to have a code block. Whether it's one line or 2 lines, you still need to have that code. The only difference is that in some languages, such as Python, it doesn't need this curly brackets with it. You can do without the curly bracket, but you have to indent in. So different language has different syntax is what I'm talking about with it. But let's assume this. Here's a true statement. Okay, if this is a true, which is a bool data type, is true, then I would enter this. If this is false, then I would skip the block and come down to my cursor after the curly bracket. So that's the two things that you have to realize. Is it true or is it false? If it's true, alright, which I'm hard coding it right now, or I can write a true statement in here, like for example 5 is greater than 4. That's a true statement mathematically with it as well. And I could say something along the line, remember the console dot log, and we could say something online, quote, this is a true statement, all right, period. And I'm going to, just to best practice, put a semicolon after this. Again, JavaScript is very, very casual about the single quote and a double quote. I want to be consistent with C++, use a double quote with it, and then in C++ you have to also code. So yeah, just you can get away with JavaScript without and be very, very casual about some of this stuff with it. So if I ran this right now, which is called what? If else JavaScript, right? Control S saves it, and I'm going to go to my command line, CMD. I'm going to find that drive that I just have, which is drive G. I'm going to do dir. I'm going to look for the directory it se cd itse 1311. Inside that prompt, and now I'm going to do dir, and I'm going to look inside the cd. I'm going to go inside that directory, cd jsclass exercises, and I do dir, and I should see 2 subdirectory, right? And I'm going to cd 02 underscore control structure, enter. Now I'm inside the directory right now. I'm going to dir just to show you what's inside. So here's this file that we have, is that we just created this right now. I'm going to compile it. Remember how we compile this? So we do node, the name of the file, if_else.js. Hit enter, and it says this statement is true. Okay, now I'm not going to close this. I'm just going to put this on the side here so we can see this. So if I went into this thing, let's say this is, I can hard code it and do like true. This will also work as well, right? Save that. So if I went back to my command line over here, hit the up arrow key, run it again, that's also true as well. So what if I purposely made it false, such as I hard code it, meaning false, Control S, saves it, then I come over here, I do run it again, and look, it doesn't print this is a true statement at all. Now, or vice versa, if I went in here, if I did the reverse is 6 is less than 4, all right, which is false, right? So it will skip this block code. It should not print this, right? So I would come down here to over here is to hit that and see it doesn't come out with it. It's still false with it. The point and I want to say is, if this is false, which is a Boolean expression of it comes out as a false with it, you will not go inside this block code and execute these statements. However, if it's true, then you go inside. Now, let's try something. Let's say this. Let's keep this thing as false. So I can go in here. I can put in another statement that follows it, like an else, and I would also give it a block code, right? So if I did something like this, I want to block code this thing. So I could say this to the console is if log. I could say this is a false statement, right? So if I did this, Control S saves it. So this is a false statement that I'm testing. So I can go in and let me run this again. As you can see, it comes out this is a false statement. Now let's minimize this. Let's come in here and let's finagle this a little bit. Instead of hard coding this, most likely you will prompt a user for some information, store into a variable, and you're going to take that variable. Let's say the variable is user, all right, and that user user information, and that user information you can set that as, let's say this user is a particular number or a person, or let's say this user is a teacher, all right? So this particular user is a teacher with it, and you need to come in here and here, look, this is what I want to talk to you about. This is a variable right now. So let's say you come into this and you're going to do user. You're going to test it. Now it's different by doing 1 equal to, you're going to compare this to a string called teacher, right? This is assigning teacher to user. This is always going to come out true, right? Which is wrong. To compare in JavaScript, let me check the time, excuse me, let me check the time for a moment, I might have gone over.